Let's continue learning about who Ben Franklin was by reading Who Was Ben Franklin. So as we go on to chapter 5, remember in the previous two chapters, he had run away from his brother who beat him. For he went from being a stranger in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to being a successful printer. And so now what happens? Let's read chapter 5, Doing Good. What is serving God? Poor Richard asked in 1747. His answer, doing good to man. After retiring from printing, Ben Franklin tried to do just that. He had always liked science. Electricity fascinated him. Besides doing his kite experiment, Ben made an early electric battery. In fact, he coined the terms electric battery, electric shock, and conductor. So here's the early battery making. So here we have needles, the globe, chamois, and a wheel. Electrostatic machine. A revolving glass globe rubs a piece of soft leather called a chamois to produce static electricity. Sewing needles transfer the electric charge from the globe to the Leyden jars. The charge is carried down into the jar through a rod and wires to the water in the metal foil inside. This causes an opposite charge to form on a band of metal foil on the outside of the jar. There's the Leyden jar. Multiple Leyden jars are connected to produce this 18th century electrical charge storage device. Ben once tried to cook a turkey using electricity from Leyden jars. Unfortunately, he touched the wires and knocked himself out. I wanted to cook a turkey, but I nearly killed a goose, he joked. Still, he believed that one day people would cook and do other daily tasks with electricity. He was right, of course. On his voyages, Franklin became the first scientist to study a powerful ocean current, the Gulf Stream. He named it the Gulf Stream and found that it could slow down or speed up ships. The Gulf Stream was warmer than the water around it, Franklin learned. To find the Gulf Stream, sailors just had to dip a thermometer into the ocean. Franklin did a clever experiment with heat. He got many cloth patches from a tailor. They were different colors, black, blue, green, purple, red, yellow, and white. On a sunny winter morning, he laid the patches on the snow. After a while, he saw that the black patch had sunk the deepest into the snow. The white patch had sunk the least. Why? Dark colors take in more heat from the sun than light ones. Therefore, the black cloth had melted more snow than any of the other colored cloths. To this day, people take Franklin's advice. On hot, sunny days, they wear light colors to stay cool. Ben's ideas about health were very modern. At the time, people thought that strange vapors in the air caused illness. Although germs weren't yet known, Franklin said that many diseases were spread from person to person. Fresh air was healthy, he argued. People should sleep with an open window and they should take a daily air bath. This meant sitting naked with the windows open, as Ben did for an hour each day. He also told people to exercise. Besides swimming and walking, he lifted dumbbells until he was in his 80s. Everything interested Ben Franklin. One day, Ben and his son Billy were riding through Maryland. Suddenly, a tornado appeared. It was in the form of a sugar loaf spinning on its point. Moving up the hill towards us, he wrote. What did Ben do? He rode his horse toward the twister. Billy followed. They kept pace with the tornado for nearly a mile. They only stopped when tree branches flew near them. It was a dangerous thing to do, but Ben was curious. What good is science that does not apply to some use? Ben asked once. He invented a number of things to improve people's lives. The lightning rod is the best known. The Franklin stove was another of his creations. Ben invented this heating device around 1740. Franklin stoves directed heat from a fireplace into a room instead of letting most of it go up the chimney. They were placed in many homes. The Franklin stove. The Franklin stove is an iron box that fits inside the fireplace. It is more heat and fuel efficient than an open earth. Air is heated as it flows through the chambers of the box and then exits from the side panels. Here's the cutaway, and here's the air box. The oil street lamps of the time often burned out quickly. Ben decided to design better lamps. He invented a lamp with a squarish shape. It had a funnel at the top to draw up the smoke. Franklin lamps burned all night. Ben's eyes weakened with age. The time came when he needed two pairs of eyeglasses. One pair was for reading, the second was for seeing things far away. Keeping track of two pairs of glasses was a bother. In 1784, he invented bifocals. Lenses for both close and distant vision were combined into one pair of glasses. Millions of people wear bifocals today. Franklin loved music. He wrote songs. He played the violin, guitar, and harp. Around 1761, Ben invented a new instrument. Different sized glass bowls were kept spinning on a cradle. Here's his bifocals, sorry. And here's his glass harmonica. There's the bowl, there's the case, there's the rod. The bowl's rims were wet. When a person held his fingers against the wet spinning bowls, it made music. Franklin's new instrument was called the glass harmonica. It was played at concerts in Europe and America for about 40 years. Another of Ben's inventions was an artificial arm. He used it to take books down from high shelves. The device was later used for taking items off top shelves in grocery stores. His inventions could have made him a fortune, but Ben refused to profit from them. The opportunity to serve others was payment enough for him, he explained. Philadelphia was more than just a place to live for Ben. He loved the city. He wanted to improve it in any way he could. That led him into public service. Books were costly and hard to find in colonial days. In 1731, Ben founded the Library Company of Philadelphia. The members paid dues. The money was spent on books which the members could borrow for free. This was a step in creating America's public library system. Fire was a great danger in an age when houses were mostly made of wood. Let's skip this part for now. Ben founded the Union Fire Company in 1736. It was America's first volunteer fire department. Philadelphia became one of the world's most fire-safe cities. Early methods and equipment for firefighting. So you see how close together the houses were back then. So here's A, bucket brigade, line from water source to the fire. B, over here, pumper, an early version of the fire engine. B, over here, basket device for lowering trapped victims. And D, right here, sacks for removing personal belongings. Not even Ben Franklin dreamed of a day when there would be telephones, TVs, and computers. The colonists stayed in touch by mail, but mail often came late or not at all. Franklin became Philadelphia's postmaster in 1737. English officials noted his fine work. They named him acting postmaster for America in 1753. Ben hired more letter carriers. He made better mail routes. Mail delivery in the colonies was greatly improved. Here's Philadelphia Academy. Philadelphia needed a hospital and a school for higher learning. Again, Ben stepped forward. He helped found the Philadelphia Academy. Later, it became the University of Pennsylvania. The same year the Academy opened, 1751, he helped start the Pennsylvania Hospital. It was the country's first general hospital. By the 1750s, Philadelphia was America's leading city. Much of the credit belonged to Benjamin Franklin, sorry. Franklin entered politics in 1736. He was chosen clerk of Pennsylvania's assembly or legislature, which met in Philadelphia. For 15 years, he recorded debates and votes, but he later recalled, I grew at length tired with sitting there to hear the debates, in which, as clerk, I could take no part. He didn't want to just write about events, he wanted to take part in them. In 1751, he ran for an assembly seat and won. 3 years later, the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, began. This war was fought over control of North America. On one side was France, helped by her Indian allies. On the other was England, aided by her 13 American colonies. Ben raised troops to help England. He even served as a general. With his son William's help, Ben led troops to the frontier. The father and son built forts. They organized patrols to protect settlers. More trouble was brewing. Pennsylvania had been named for the Penns. They were an English family who had founded the colony. The Penns still ran Pennsylvania, but during the French and Indian War, the colonists became angry at the Penns. They claimed that the family wasn't paying enough to fight the war. In 1757, the Pennsylvania Assembly asked Franklin to visit England. His job was to get money from the Penns. Debbie stayed home with 13-year-old Sally. William went along with his father. Their ship was almost captured by French ships. Off England, they were nearly shipwrecked, but they made it through the fog and arrived in London in July. Ben had no idea at the time that he would spend most of his remaining years overseas. Chapter 6, Revolution. The Franklins moved into a London apartment. Ben showed Billy places he had known in his days as a young printer. Besides helping his father, Billy studied law in London. He became friends with rich young English people. Soon Billy seemed more English than American. Ben was pleased. England ruled the colonies. Ben hoped that one day Billy would serve in the English government. Ben needed 3 years to complete his mission. In 1760, the British government agreed that Pennsylvania deserved help. The Penns had to pay more money for the French and Indian War. But the Franklins did not go home yet. Ben enjoyed the attention he was getting as America's greatest scientist and inventor. Billy was about to get an important job. In August 1762, the King of England named William Franklin Royal Governor of New Jersey. Soon after being named to run New Jersey for the king, William was married. His wife was named Elizabeth Downs. He had met her at a party. The newlyweds sailed to America. They settled in Burlington, New Jersey. Ben returned to his wife and daughter. Only 15 miles separated Philadelphia and Burlington. Ben and his son saw each other often. For 2 years, Ben spent a lot of time on post office business. But there was new trouble with the Penns. The colonists wanted Pennsylvania to be taken away from the Penns. They wanted their colony placed under the king's direct rule. In late 1764, Benjamin was sent back to England to make this happen. He had been in England for a few weeks when a more serious problem arose. England had won the French and Indian War, but the war had been costly. England needed money. To help raise funds, England passed the Stamp Act in early 1765. The new law taxed Americans on newspaper and other paper goods. There's William Franklin, governor of New Jersey. The Stamp Act. To help pay its debts, the British government created a tax in the form of a stamp. This tax stamp was required on all publications and legal papers throughout the colonies. English people asked the famous American his opinion about the new tax. Franklin opposed it, but not very strongly. He didn't know that 3,000 miles away, Americans were enraged by the tax. In fact, the colonists were rioting. When Philadelphians learned that Franklin wasn't fighting the tax with all his might, a mob threatened to burn his home. William Franklin rushed from New Jersey to take Sally away. Deborah refused to budge. She prepared to defend her home with a gun. Luckily, the rioters stayed away. Ben learned about events at home. He saw that Americans wanted him to speak for them. He decided to express their anger, even if he didn't yet feel it deeply. Almost overnight, he became a leading Stamp Act foe. He wrote to British newspapers, he debated with British lawmakers, and in early 1766, he argued against the Stamp Act before Parliament, Britain's lawmaking body. The Boston Tea Party. A few days later, the tax was repealed. Americans gave Franklin much of the credit. However, there was talk of new English taxes. Ben felt that he couldn't go home during this crisis. Also, other colonies besides Pennsylvania were asking him to handle their problems with England. Britain did pass more taxes on tea and other items. As Britain taxed the Americans and sent in soldiers to enforce its laws, Franklin changed. No longer did he just act as America's spokesman, he truly hated England. He spoke so angrily that the English called him the prime conductor of the American rebels. There's a Boston Tea Party that happened December 16, 1773. To protest the tax on tea, patriots disguised as Indians boarded 3 British ships and dumped tons of tea into Boston Harbor. On Christmas Eve of 1774, William wrote to his father with bad news. Deborah Franklin, Ben's wife of 44 years, had died of a stroke. William blamed Ben for her death. He felt that her heart had been broken because Ben had been away for 10 years. Ben knew that there was some truth to this, but it hurt to hear it from Billy. He also knew that he and his son were growing apart. Ben was fighting for America's rights. Billy was the king's governor in New Jersey. He sided with England. Ben was at a low point in his life. His wife was dead. His son was angry at him. They were on different sides of a giant political fight. England blamed him for the trouble with America. Ben decided that he belonged back in his own country with his family. In March of 1775, he sailed for home. On April 19th, while he was at sea, war broke out between England and America. Okay, so next time we will read Chapter 7, Creating a New Nation.